All right, Dana.
Oh, Dana Stevens here from Patterson, New Jersey. Also known as the Average Bro, saxophone player, but amateur thinker here right now. You got it.
Well, my name is Lucas Vesely. Also an amateur thinker, quite not quite average bro, but I am a bro, I guess. Musician, fellow newbie podcaster. Just happy to be here. Love everybody.
And my name's Peter Stoltzman, and I'm everywhere on the web is Peter John Stoltzman. And we are very happy to welcome a guest, a fellow Bay Area or California cat. We all have some elements of California roots, and mine are only 6 years, but it was pretty foundational for me. Last time you missed it, Jay, but last time we haven't posted our last podcast yet, but we talked about our Oakland ties.
Yeah,
that was fun. But anyway, let's hear welcome Jay Standards, aka Jay Sanders. And Jay, why don't you tell us who you are and what your work is now, and maybe just a little bit of your history in jazz too. Yeah, I know you have personal connection to both these guys.
I do. Yeah. Long connection musically with both these guys, especially Dana. So yeah, I'm from San Francisco right now. I've been here since the 90s, since 98. I came from Santa Cruz, nice little hippie town on the coast, California. I'm proud of that. It's a good spot. My mom is still down there. And I'm a pianist and trumpet player. Been working professionally here in the Bay for quite some time. Since I was a teenager.
What's up with the piano and trumpet thing, man? You know Javi Santiago?
Yeah.
He's trumpet and
it's pretty bad.
My teacher from University of Texas, Jeff Helmer, is piano trumpet.
Javi is a bad MF.
There's there's another guy who's a really great player.
Josh Nelson as well.
Oh, I'm thinking of another guy who was in, I think, Michigan, and then he went to Texas. I think did a graduate degree in Texas or something too.
At UNT?
I can't remember, but great trumpet player and piano player. We're in a jazz piano competition together once.
Also, people sleep on Joey DeFrancesco.
Oh yeah, don't sleep on Joey.
Does he play trumpet too?
Yes.
What's up with that, man? It's a thing.
Yeah, it is a thing.
Anyway, I had a student who was coming to me for lessons for a while. He was already a really good trumpet player, and he was trying to get his jazz piano chops together. He's pretty good at both, man.
Yeah, I started on piano. I probably, in my first 10 or 15 years of being a musician, took trumpet a little more seriously, and now I'm definitely kind of split in half and half to where I feel like I'm finding my voice on both instruments.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But I was having a hell of a time, great time, working almost every night in the Bay Area, until COVID hit. Yeah. And I'm sure you've talked quite a bit about, what the impact this has had on our community, which is nothing
short of a lot, actually.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about that a lot. No, we've really kind of stuck away from music, to believe it or not.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of anguish, but let's get to that. At some point, maybe we can hit on that topic. So yeah, it's been a little bit tough, but I think still happy to be here in the Bay Area. There's a great network of cats here, just a great support group. But I do have a day gig, and my day gig is I'm working on clean water issues. And so I do videos. I'm a video editor as well. And so I help produce content and do narrative building and storytelling for a group called the Fluoride Action Network. And we're raising awareness about fluoride in water, which turns out to be more harmful and less beneficial than we were originally told. And that is kind of my entry into one of my passions, which is kind of the health freedom movement. To be able, following an important tenet that we should all be able to choose what we put into our bodies. following an important tenet called informed consent. So I work on those issues. I'm also super interested in geopolitics, how power is wielded around the world. Pretty big critic of American government, at least the way we're behaving now and how we behaved for the last 40 or so years. And kind of losing my faith in, democracy, being extremely cynical about politics in general in America, and wondering where our agency has gone. And also trying to think about alternative solutions to, what we've been offered here politically and, and commercially, how we can interact together in more like productive ways, to like decentralized ways, to try and get around some of the like kind of top-down authoritarian tendencies we're seeing across the spectrum, like with tech and censorship and the government not being very responsive to us. So I'm trying to work on, those are my passionate interests, and I'm trying to work on solutions going forward to try and break us out of this mess. And so by that, I mean, I'm just an armchair philosopher just trying to find my way through this world.
Welcome. So what would you like to talk about first? I mean, what really comes to mind, like what's been kind of floating around in your head that you really feel strongly about, that you feel we should address right now? Jay.
Well, one thing that comes to mind that I think is pretty important is seems like we've lost our ability to be able to make a connection and even have a conversation with people who don't 100% even agree with us on everything. And I'm seeing a really disturbing trend where it was, perfectly reasonable to have political differences with neighbors, friends, family members. It's beginning to get to a point where we are so tribal.
You think so? You think like going out to like Thanksgiving with your family, people didn't fight about politics? This has been happening since I've been a kid. I don't know about you, but
definitely fighting about politics. But I think there was a time where it could just be like, oh yeah, he's a Republican, I'm a Democrat, and you can sit at the dinner table and love each other.
Right. At the end of the day, like ultimately it's all family. We're just talking politics, and people forgive one another, and then back to normal.
Yeah. I'm just noticing the disturbing trend of not being able to have conversations with and not be able to be humble about what we know, how we know what we know, epistemology, and to be able to kind of like check ourselves about what we know, and then kind of carry that forward into our conversations that allow us to learn new things, having discussions with other people that we may not agree with. And hell, we may end up agreeing with them where they may help us see us in different light, but we're trending in opposite directions now, where we are fractionalizing and tribalizing so much, and we're seeing each person that doesn't agree with us as we're otherizing them, and we're turning them into enemies. And I was hoping we can address maybe ways that we can talk to people that we have minor or major disagreements, whether it's about COVID, whether it's about like Biden, or who's president or who's ruling over us. I'm hoping we can get to a spot where we kind of like reverse this trend. I don't know if you guys agree that this is happening at all, but
I'm reminded of that quote that you said a couple of weeks ago. When you humanize your enemy, you risk your community dehumanizing you. Or you risk being dehumanized by your community. But and that is where we are, man. I mean, to your point, Jay, I mean, I think we were all little, but in like the 80s, there was division, sure, but nothing compared to the way it is now. It's gotten more like this. It was like that, but now it's like, He disappeared, Lucas. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, the thing is, I guess my question to you, Jay, is I guess we want to keep hope alive, but how possible do you think it is to make the changes, that you're involved with making? I mean, is your cynicism, do you have hope that movement is being made on that front despite the backwards nature of our government?
Yeah, I have hope. I'm a fairly optimistic person, even though I like to crawl down some rabbit holes, which kind of, maybe tend to portray the darker side of power in this universe. But I do have hope, and this is why. When I have personal interactions face to face with people, when I have had in the last few months, I've had some really amazing experiences with people that I've actually been on fights with on social media. Mm-hmm. And we finally got together in person, and everything was water under the bridge. And it was love and respect. And we were just, soulful people playing music and loving each other respectfully. And that led to me to believe that I didn't watch this Tristan Harris thing. I did watch Social Dilemma. And I think it is no trivial matter, the effect social media has had on our communication with each other. And it's no trivial matter in maybe even being the major explainer for why we have tribalized so much. And so if a solution is as damn simple as getting the hell off social media and creating meaningful personal interactions, which is why COVID has been so hard, so that gives me hope. That definitely gives me hope. So last October, I got off Facebook. Best thing I ever did. I still do my Twitter for news. Have my people I follow. And I've found that Telegram is probably my favorite app for that's going to replace my Facebook groups. And for the most part, I don't do social media except for to post cats and gigs.
Yeah.
Cats.
Love it.
So yeah, I have hope.
You talking about meow cats, not jazz cats?
Oh yeah, meow cats.
Both. Yeah.
Well, jazz cats, but whenever things get really spicy and heated on Facebook, I immediately go. You probably have seen it a couple times. I immediately go, "Hey, cat videos, anyone?" I start putting up cat videos.
Why is that such a that's a meme in itself? When everything gets heated, this girl I went out on a date with, she's like, "All right, I've had enough of this discourse on social media. I'm gonna go stare at cat videos and cat pictures." That's a thing. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean that Bob and White cat.
Yeah.
He'll fix any social media ill,
Totally. So you mentioned if I can challenge your hope a little.
Challenge your hope. You go, Dana.
You mentioned what was that last thing? God damn it! What was the last thing you mentioned, Jay?
Well, I was talking about social media and.
I know. I got it. So when this I think I heard this on Rising maybe with Kristen Steiger. I can't remember where I heard this from the last couple of days. But once it could have even been CNBC. I don't know. But once a business, an industry starts being profitable, it becomes very extremely difficult to end it for any reason. I don't know how we stop social media.
You're talking about profiting of that particular industry, right? The profiting.
Listen,
and then,
when you look, actually, I know who it was. It had to have been Weinstein. Actually, it had to have been Eric, I think, talking about this. But when you look at, I don't know, Zuckerberg or even Dorsey, at a meeting with Congress at a hearing, they look like there's a gun to their head for a fucking reason, because they're making sure their shareholders are going to be making money. It's not, they don't have control. They see the problem. There's a reason they don't allow their families or their kids to be on this shit. It's a fucking good reason, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, when the second they went public and put this over to the shareholders, they gave away their ability to really make any real significant change that would in any way threaten their profit margin.
You know,
Yeah.
Tristan.
So I don't know how the fuck you get over that. Yeah, what is Tristan? Maybe it was Tristan Harris, actually. Maybe it was him.
Yes, and he had an interesting point on this. I'm not sure. It might have been Bret who had that point, and then Tristan. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but he said, you know, it's not. He would disagree with the shareholders are a gun to their head.
I remember him saying that. Yeah,
because he's like, most of these people they're just like in their kind of niche, right? Like like solving the problem that's right.
It's compartmentalized.
Yeah, it has to do with profits. But it also has to do with like technology stuff, optimizing the next whatever, you know, to you know, create the right conditions for engagements, and you know, and it's like the externalities that are created, right? Like Peter Joseph's term, negative externalities, right? It's like the you know, the effects of these things that you don't, it's like, oh, I'm just going to put my blinders on and do my job, you know, and like work and optimize this technology. Let's not think about like what's actually happening in society or people's lives and psyches because of this.
Well,
you know, and then those things, it's like it's I don't, it's
you can extend that to like, well, like world events. I know it has a little to do with what we're talking about, but like people in America tend to think everything that's happening in America is pertaining to their own situation, but they're not thinking about, you know, well, now so more because of social media, which is a positive aspect of social media, where you have these protests in Myanmar right now happening. You know, 16 people have been killed, I guess, and it's being, you know, getting to such a high degree, like there's so much violence going on, and there are people, you know, I was in San Francisco and in Japantown, and there are people out there protesting with flags from Myanmar, you know, so this to me is kind of a positive effect where people globally are all like sharing in the same sentiment. These injustices are happening and people are rising up, you know, and that's really important. So in that sense, you know, there is, you know, something really, really positive, that effect of social media. But then going back to how we're so compartmentalized and sometimes we don't see what's happening, or the atrocities in China, like I always mention, the Uyghurs right now, you know, and how like American companies are in bed with Chinese companies and they just turn the other cheek, you know, because of the profit margin, you know, because there's shareholders, because there's money being made, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, that actually happened. Kissinger took the first trip over to China, and at that point was in like the mid '80s. At that point, a whole shitload of American capital, finance capital, made its way over to China, and actually kind of jump-started their economy. And when I look at the global power ring, I kind of see, you know, a supranational power structure, something like the World Economic Forum, that, you know, kind of really is more of a what you want to look at for like who are our rulers, you know.
You're talking about like Davos or something like this?
Yeah, Davos, but you know, but general roundtable groups, think tanks, and whatnot. I mean, not to say that there's like some monolithic, you know, cabal out controlling the strings from some dark, smoky room, but where these oligarchs' interests align, more often than not, they align. Sometimes they have differences, but that's kind of how we got to our world. And it definitely seems like maybe that's why we're not seeing much political agency, right, as voters in America, because really we're an oligarchy. And you're right, Dana. I mean, I'm optimistic that we can have personal connections, but I think you're right. I think there's going to be like there might be like some kind of like a fracturing of society for that to have to happen.
Well,
right?
what have I been saying?
For what to happen?
What have I been saying the past few weeks here?
Really?
We need 5 Americas.
Really, 5?
We need cinco Americas. Yes, we do.
I just don't think
Necesito
that,
cinco Americas.
I to challenge that notion, Dana. I not that like maybe reducing the consolidation of power or splitting the consolidated power isn't a bad idea. Maybe it's a good idea, but it's a little bit like United States centric kind of thinking. It's like we're a big player in the world, but like like what Jay's pointing at right now, right? There's kind of a whole other grid of power that we exist in, and that's like structural, organizations and people or institutions like the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, etc. But it's also like energetic, like consciousness, like a collective consciousness kind of grid that we're in, that I see, that's like we have got to do work not just to like break down institutions that are corrupt and maybe split up powers that have too much power, but we've got to build up our consciousness so that it's more aware of kind of the larger pictures and the connectedness, and also like goes hand in hand with understanding negative externalities, and like the larger effects of our collective behaviors.
Yeah.
I don't know
how do you
how.
deal with the power, man?
Well,
How do you even
it's,
stand up to Goliath?
see this. I guess I got a question for you, Jay, on this then, right? Because we tend to keep circling around on this of like, okay, we see the big problems, but how do any of us actually act, let alone conceive of macro solutions, right? And so like I've kind of through where we've only had 5 episodes, but through these 5 episodes I'm almost feeling like I'm redefining myself as a microologist. Like that's my philosophy of life, that like
Brilliant.
you have to focus on the micro
Yeah, I was about to say,
and act in the micro. And you can have like a conscious intent to align to some macro purpose or philosophy, but the macro is so ungraspable, and like unmovable. It's like we've used the analogy of like throwing rocks into the river, and like how many rocks is it going to take, and you could throw 1,000 rocks into a river, but if they land in all different places, it doesn't do shit to change a current, right? And so I guess maybe this is a good segue to what your work is with your organization, and if you feel like you're able to, by focusing on a specific area, specific cause, to actually throw bigger rocks, change currents. I don't know.
Yeah, addressing certain things like the water, the fluoride in the water, pointing things out that are just not balanced right now.
Yeah, well, I just agree with you, Peter, on the fact that it does seem like an insurmountable task to deal with things in the macro. And I definitely have certainly been thinking along terms of the micro, but I guess you better characterize that as I'm trying to see. I feel like a lot of the problems we're seeing with power today have to do with the centralization of power, and I feel like these terms that we use that we throw around, capitalism, socialism, communism, I feel like now they are excellent historical framework for us to view through a lens, how power structures work. But let's be honest, like these two systems have completely fused. We're not only like a hybrid, it seems like a permanent, I mean, you can call it a fascistic state. It's more like an Italian fascism than like a South American type, but especially when you look at big tech, I mean, where do you draw the line between Google and the U.S. government, right? So especially since a lot of Google was funded by In-Q-Tel, which is the CIA's venture capital firm, and the Google Maps, and of course Facebook has a history with.
Oh yeah, Alphabet, the military, applications.
Yeah, so it does seem like at that level of consolidation of power, let's be honest, that's a lot of power to wield. They have basically a panopticon to wield against us, and we will
bringing saliva to a drone fight. Okay,
exactly, and we willingly become subjects in the panopticon by logging on to Facebook and sharing every one of our last damn ideas, but that's the price we pay, I guess, for communicating with each other. But yeah, so I guess I see centralization by states, by corporations, as this kind of the same thing, since they basically have fused anyway. And so maybe some of the solutions are decentralized solutions, and so those could be on the micro level. Those have to be on the micro level. So even something as simple as like food co-ops, I mean, it's just so simple, right? But just growing your own food, sharing with other people, bartering with people, trade our music, trade our gifts for other stuff, and
creating like microeconomies within your community.
I feel like it depends on where you live, though, right? I do feel like we're going to have a supply chain breakdown at some point, right? Because that's just not sustainable, right?
It's starting already.
Yeah. So if you live in California, right, we do have a good here. I mean, supply chains, everything grows Central Valley. It's only an hour or so from the stores here. I mean, we have a good, I feel like there's going to be quite a bit of food inflation, but we have a good here. But a lot of parts are going to go through some serious supply chain shocks at some point in the future. And of course, the WEF talks about the fourth industrial revolution, which I actually would love to talk about if you want to, maybe not this very second, but that's probably what I fear as the biggest problem humanity has to deal with is the global technocracy plans for implementing the fourth industrial revolution, also known as the Great Reset. But so if we decentralize our lives politically, but we also can decentralize our lives economically, I think is really important too, which is why I was talking about growing food, trading, bartering and stuff. And then what's the way out of it? I mean, it's not going to be easy. I mean, there's going to be a lot of strife, and people are going to go to jail. You're going to have to do some non-compliance, and we're going to have to make some noise. But
do you think it really it runs in tandem with abolishing police completely? Is that a good idea? This is something that people talk about these days, and it's well, I understand why they're saying it. Yeah, we should all be concerned about that. But what do you think about that, Jay?
I think police brutality is a very serious issue in America and even in Europe. As you can see, yellow vests getting their asses beat too, I'm not sure abolishing the police is the right way to go about it. I definitely think we just take one look at the police. They look like they just came back from Afghanistan, for Christ's sake. Let's demilitarize the police and then take away their indemnity, right? That would be a good start. I don't know. I'm not qualified really to talk about that because I haven't really experienced police violence, so I think a lot of people are better qualified to talk about that than me. But
sorry, just a quick question. Take away their indemnity? What
is that called? It's their legal immunity from prosecution if they fuck up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's layers of that shit that just protects them from accountability.
Yeah.
Jesus.
One of our first topics that we got on was accountability, and I mean, for me, that's a big deal. I feel like I'm very radical in terms of transparency and accountability for institutions. I think that both of those would go a long way when we talk about trust, right? both of those would go a long way towards being able to trust, and especially when you get to institutions that have not only economic power but power of violence to wield over
especially
people. And so,
violence.
you know, when you like the police being number one, right? If we had radical transparency and accountability, police behavior would shift in a big way.
Okay,
The whole culture would
not
shift.
to be Mr. Cynic here, but what on earth is the possibility? How is it possible for any of these wonderful ideas that we always come up with? How is it possible for them to be enacted? Where is the power structure that has the incentive to hold these motherfuckers accountable? Where is the power structure that has the incentive to hold these motherfuckers accountable?
Well, we just kind of talked about it.
Like, don't see it. Who's going to hold them accountable, Jay?
Well, if you could, well, again, are we going to vote our way out of this? Probably not. But, you know, if you did take away their liability, their immunity from liability, you could probably get somewhere.
But how do we do that?
The politicization of this is so hard to overcome right now. You know, it shouldn't be a political issue.
Totally.
But unfortunately,
we don't have the power, dude. Okay,
yeah,
name me a protest in our lifetimes that's made a fucking difference.
Well, Occupy Wall Street made a difference, and then they got co-opted.
Right.
No, well, what difference?
I mean, every movement
eventually make. That's the question.
Every movement that makes a difference and every protest that makes a difference then gets undermined in some way because you know the powers that it threatens are working to cover their ass and to diminish
do whatever it takes. They will do whatever.
I mean, Dana's right. I mean, we're pretty outgunned here. I mean, on every aspect of it, not just police brutality, which is a serious fucking issue.
And thank you for not bringing up saying it's just black people with police brutality. It's human beings. Yeah. They are the face of the government that sees us every fucking day. And they will do what they need to do to whatever they're told to do. That is their job. And if they feel threatened, you better, sorry. That's it. And they have mandates, as you said, they will be taken care of.
Have you ever chatted with Riley about these issues?
I haven't, man. It's so funny, man. Last time I saw him, he was visiting my, you know, Jameel Brown lives on the other side of this wall here. He came to visit. I didn't even know he was in town. And I hear this knocking on my door. Doom, doom, doom. And I said, who is it? He said, police.
You guys talking about Riley Bandy?
I lost my shit.
Oh, wow.
I was like, and I opened the door and he was dying laughing. But anyway, yeah.
You better not be in his OPD outfit.
No.
I'm sorry, SFPD.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, yeah, no, I haven't, I would love to, but we're always so, you know, busy. I know police officers in my family. I mean, I you know, it's not like listen, when they're not in uniform, they're human beings. Cool, no problem. But when they're actually on the job doing what they're paid to do, I mean, you have your great apples. But again,
like you guys seen that video that I've sent in the feed, right? Of that you know, police officer of color in Portland, Oregon, who is the son of a police officer. So it runs in his family, and he's speaking out about like the absurdity of just the protesters are getting like, it doesn't matter what they're protesting at this point. Well, I mean, yeah, it should matter what they're protesting. It's like Antifa, BLM protesters, and how there's like hints of racism in like the protesters. Like, for instance, the cop is talking to a woman of color, and another protester, a Caucasian person, comes in, tells the woman not to talk to the cop, right? That's just ridiculous. What right does that dude have to tell that woman to stop talking to him? They're having a peaceful discussion, right? But all because of the identity of the fact that he's wearing a badge, all of a sudden he's painted as an enemy. And it's like, it's a BLM movement, and the dude's, I mean, what are you doing, dude? What is the end result here?
And when I see that, it's like, okay, not only do are we bringing, let's say, peanuts to a drone fight, maybe more than saliva, guys, I'm sorry. Maybe we're bringing peanuts to a drone fight. At the same time, the division they're trying to sow within the non-power class is working.
Yeah, that's true.
It's working, so we have to combat that at the same time. We've got thousands.
Well, so think about this.
Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are taking this division bullshit. That think the black guy who doesn't have a job is worse off than me who doesn't have a job because I'm white or whatever other color. It's like people are going there when they should be going together against him.
Yeah, right.
And it's not an organic process. I mean, I'm not an accidentalist. I don't think this is an organic process where we just naturally decided we all fucking hate each other and that none of us have any commonality. You know, this is a tactic that has been used over and over and over and over again. When your government gets completely corrupted, they just divide and conquer you, and any kind of division that they can, any wedge issue, they're gonna fucking drive right home because while you're distracted, they're running off with all the money and power.
Not a video I want to play, but keep going. It's gonna take me a second to find it.
Yeah,
you know,
I was telling Lukash, I don't know if you want to. If we care, if you can do like a screen share, a 2-minute YouTube video, but there's a couple of experiments that I feel like kind of illustrate our time well. Do you guys know about the Milgrom experiment?
Oh, you were talking,
This is some deep psychological shit, man. What?
Yeah, so the Milgrom and the Ash experiment too. So the Milgrom is like, we could watch it. The Ash one is easier to describe. It's like you have a room, it's a psychological experiment in conformity.
Yeah,
right?
Stanley Milgram's the same thing, right?
What's up?
Is Stanley Milgram? Is Stanley Milgram? Is it?
Maybe,
anyway,
yeah.
It's the same thing.
The Milgrom one is more about medical authority. And
they were giving shocks to people.
Shocks to people, yeah.
They weren't actually doing
they
it.
Were. The guy being shocked was an actor as well as the scientist directing the shocks. But it turns out that if a strong authority figure tells you to inflict pain on somebody because they're in the authority to do so, they will go so far as to administer a fatal dose, a fatal shock, because someone in a white lab coat said it's okay to do so. And the guy in the booth's like, you're shocking me, stop! And the doctor's like, carry on. With the next voltage, carry on. And the guy's like, this guy's in pain. He's suffering. Carry on, sir, carry on. 30 volts. Boom.
Douchebags.
Yeah. So he would give him a fatal dose.
But it's not douchebags. It's just people, man.
It's just
like
good
hardwired.
People. Good people. And then real quickly, the Ash experiment is just another kind of psychological conformity. You basically have a room full of actors. You draw a squiggly line on the piece of paper. There's one guy who's not in on it. But everyone is describing the line longer than it actually is. And the guy just can't bring himself, even though he knows it's damn right well true. The line is this long. Everybody else says it's this long. And so therefore, that's his answer. And it happened in like 80 to 90% of all the people. They picked the wrong line on purpose because the rest of the people did.
Like preference falsification, basically. They went with the
No, because they hadn't even formed a preference. It's just social conformity.
Just
wow,
conformity.
Interesting conformity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and adherence to authority. I mean, the Milgram stuff stemmed out of like the post World War II, just trying to figure out like why the fuck did Germans do this stuff?
Yeah, you mean MK Ultra?
Huh?
Well, beyond the fact that their culture, their economy crashed, and people were like standing in line with like their whole bank accounts trying to get bread on the street. I mean, they were desperate. They were hungry. This is like something that happens in communist regimes too. So, I mean, there are a lot of factors probably as to why they decided with somebody like Hitler that was giving them all the answers that were like bringing them out of like this very disparity and this like intense suffering they were experiencing after the crash of their economy. Right. I mean, the Weimar Republic, that's
I mean,
pretty dark.
Hitler comparisons aside, I mean, are we 30s Weimar economically?
The fact that we're asking that question a lot these days says something.
I don't want to bring it to Jews level, but economically speaking, you know.
Yeah, well, listen, yeah, divide and conquer is divide and conquer.
Yeah, and there's indisputable, like mass desperation, basically. People on the verge of desperation, if not fully in it. And you know, I think a huge percentage of Americans right now are like, you know, like the studies have shown, you know, one paycheck away or one disaster away from desperation. And so everybody feels that stress, that underlying stress, and that leaves us more susceptible than otherwise to you know, whatever other pressures or influences, and then also I think to that like false security of being able to follow something that feels right, you know. And also when you're in that mode, to blame something that seems wrong.
Yes. I know.
And then that leaves us like very little room for nuance, which when you get into an issue, like for instance, to take us off of the like Nazi thing, but you know, to like health freedom, right?
Oh yeah.
Like talk about that. I mean, we could shift gears in a big way here, but you know, the implications of health freedom go down, you know, what is considered a very radical path. And I don't know if you get that a lot, if you get you know, marginalized or a lot of pushback and from the mainstream. But
I mean, I mean, there's pushback. I mean, before everybody who advocated, before we got to a point where people who advocate for informed consent to be able to choose what you want to put in your body became nothing but anti-vaccine rhetoric.
Mm-hmm.
This was pretty much, you know, I mean, it's written into the Nuremberg codes. I mean, this is a direct result of what happened in Germany, is that the Nuremberg codes specifically forbid human experimentation, and that the tenet of informed consent means you get to choose what you put in your body. You can't be coerced into doing it either, economically or physically. You know, that's also, you know, not informed consent either.
What is it going to take for us to deal with that here? I think of these monumental tasks that we have to do. I mean, especially if you think of having to do it through the system the way it is, dude.
Well, we can look at what happened with lead as an issue that moved at a glacial pace until finally people just realized, oh yeah, lead isn't just completely harmless in small amounts. It actually is basically making everyone fucking stupid. And there's a high level of strong evidence for that, and that all these doctors and the CDC and the NIH and all these people who basically carried water for fossil fuel companies and for lead producers for how many years? Like 100 years, paint, gasoline, toys, everything. And then all of a sudden the paradigm changed to now we understand that even the most tiny level of lead is going to cognitively affect children. It's a developmental neurotoxin, just like fluoride is now becoming the new lead. We're about, where we are now with fluoride is probably where lead was like in the 60s, or sorry, in this maybe in the 60s and 70s, right when the opinion really started to change, and then it took a long time for the policy to follow the science.
I hate to be the cynical asshole here all the time, but for Christ's sake, man, Flint, Michigan.
Right. Come on.
We're still talking about lead, man. Totally. Obama took that sip,
that
fake ass sip, 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago now.
Well, and you want to get macro, like,
but hold on. Patterson, New Jersey, and any other city that's on this Passaic River, which is about 100 feet behind where I'm standing right now, any city on this fucking river has lead levels very similar to Flint right now, and we're not fucking hearing about it. So yeah, no, okay, what are these paint companies, Sherwin and whatever the fuck? They're not selling lead in their paints, and Sherwin. They're not selling paint with lead anymore. But what about the water supply in the Rust Belt, which is where I live? I live in a mill that was one of the first continuous paper mills in this country. This area was founded by Alexander Hamilton because of the waterfall that's a block away from here, and it ran water to fuel all these mills. And this building is 220 some odd years old now. You know, how are they giving a shit? The waterfall, when I see all the water coming into the bottom, the soapy mess that's at the bottom, they're putting that through some whatever fucking, we're supposed to be drinking that shit? Seriously? Showering with that shit?
You got a filter, right?
Yeah, you know me. I'm Berkey all the way. But but for fuck's sake, though, I can't even. I feel afraid of washing my hands in this fucking water because it comes. You know, it's lead coming out of my tap. Okay, so let alone fluoride. We've talked about the fluoride thing. You know, so what the fuck do we do? So that's just lead, which we've known for a long time now, the effects of it. We still can't get it right. Yep. Now we have 20 plus, or that's probably a small number, 20 plus other issues that are probably as big, if not bigger, that
plastics
we still aren't even.
Jesus Christ.
Right.
The garbage patch. I mean, there's 1,000 things. The Brunt ice shelf that just broke off today or yesterday. This twice the size of Manhattan.
Yeah, we're in the decline stage of the Roman Empire at this point. You know, there's really no.
But on a world level, it seems like.
Right. Let me jump on your cynical bandwagon for a second. All right.
No.
I'm just going to piggyback.
Help.
Yeah, because here's the thing, right? Like Barack Obama went and did that shit. How the fuck do any of those motherfuckers expect us to trust them after that shit?
Do you feel me?
I totally. I mean, you can feel my outrage. It's deep outrage at.
You know why? Because Trump gets you to think Obama, you know, is something that you want again.
They fucking ruined it though, man. And everybody does it, and then they you know, they break us down and they try, you know, the cycle comes back around every 2 or 4 years. And so they build us up with rhetoric and hope again, and then fucking just, you know, they give us you know, let them eat cake, fucking crumbs. And then, you know, like COVID relief bill, we're going to get you, you know, thousands of dollars, or maybe it'll be a little less and a little less, and we'll take out this and that, and it'll be cool. And don't look over there, we're bombing some countries. And I'm sure
you're going to give you money. We're going to give you some money.
Handouts going left and right to you know, it's going to take a while because we got to figure out who gets the pork, you know. You know, nobody knows about all that. Nobody will read a 6,000 page bill or whatever the fuck this is going to be. But it's very dark, right? That like the cynicism is real, and anybody who denies that, and anybody who says like just, you know, look on the fucking bright side, is fooling themselves. And I feel like this is one of the things that liberals do way too much. Is like either look on the bright side bullshit, right? And I shouldn't blame that on liberals, because conservatives do that just as much, if not more. Like, you know,
in economics, especially,
believe in Jesus, right? And everything is fine.
Jesus,
you know,
Jesus,
so just don't, you know, don't worry about it. Or like put your head in the sand, right? And just like be an individualist. You know, take care of yourself, and like, don't worry about anything on the macro, because you can't do anything about it anyway, and fuck it, fuck everything. Just, you know, live for yourself.
And then you want me to fucking stand there and pledge allegiance to your fucking flag?
What if you had
a dark paradigm, man? It's real dark. It's a cynical paradigm we live in.
What if you had like the fuck it, I'm gonna take care of myself and my community kind of attitude? as opposed to just not myself, not individualism per se, although I do think there's
Well, that's
good.
great. That's great. That's all we can do. That's all we have the power to do is deal with our micros.
Yeah.
And get off of the centralized power supply chains or food supply chains or whatever supply chains. It's not going to be perfect, obviously. But that could be a solution. Other than that, we're going to have to like meld into this new, like, let's be honest. UBI is coming, right?
You think so?
Yeah.
I hope so. If we're not going to have radical systemic change, then give us some fucking UBI.
No, but let me finish though.
Give us something.
Because UBI is going to come, but it's not going to be without its strings attached, baby. There's going to be a lot of strings attached. And it's going to basically be like, Lukash was talking about before, like the Chinese social credit system is coming to America. It's going to be.
Oh, no. Please don't say that. Do you have evidence of that? We were talking about that last episode, and I was like, I don't want to get into this, but it's scary to me.
These are subtle things. See, they're subtle things.
Social credit, all that.
They have the info. Yeah, I mean,
they write about it at the World Economic Forum in their, the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Is it part of the plan of the Great Reset or whatever?
Yeah, and then it's going to get to a point where like. The hedge funds, how they bundle up mortgages and sell them as securities,
Yeah, it's terrible. But
they're going to bundle our behaviors, and they're going to trade on predicting our behaviors as through financial, social credit scores and wearables.
No.
Fuck, 1984, Brave New World. Here we come.
Full Black Mirror.
Full Black Mirror. Yeah. Is it going to happen in our life? We might be pretty old for them not to give a crap about us anymore, really.
Oh, no.
You come along sooner. I mean, look how much has changed in just 1 year in COVID. It comes quickly. It comes quick.
The way our Gen Zers are basically just allergic to anyone that doesn't think exactly like them. They're asking for it already. It's basically like that now. You have school kids... And I'm not going to say which.
Don't diss on the young man.
I'm not. Well, hey. Dude, I'm not going to specify which groups, but you have school kid groups that are telling the authorities at their school, like teachers and people that run the school, they're basically getting their needs met because honestly, they're the ones paying for the fucking school to exist, and they know that now. So the powers. The authorities, the totalitarian dictatorships that exist in America, called corporations and schools and things like that, they are listening to the Gen Zs because that's who's paying their fucking bills.
Yep.
This is happening.
I'd rather have.
No. Listen,
there's some problematic
tactics.
But I'd rather have bottom up power. Define. It sounded like you were just complaining that
I don't want
that schools are being responsive to students. I don't understand why. Maybe if it's like super politicized, like what happened to Bret Weinstein was fucked up, but like.
That's what I'm talking about.
That happens a lot. That happens a whole lot now.
I see
schools should be responsive to students. I don't know about the political part of it.
To what degree is the question?
Because schools are like commodifying students left and right, man. It's gross. And all they want to do is churn them in and churn them out so that they can maximize their profit off of the student fees and
student loans.
What the students are wanting, though, they're not wanting the things that we know they deserve and what they need. They're wanting their emotions to be catered to, which is okay, sure, but you live on a planet spinning in a universe, and this is not like you can't, it's not my way or the highway. That's not how you get along with a diverse population. This is what Hitler did. Okay, listen, cool. have your issues and let's talk about it. But you don't tell the teacher it's this, or I'm going to turn you in and call the news and make this whole fucking school down because you ain't following my shit. That's some bullshit.
Or like students turning in their parents because they were, Capitol Hill and whatnot, and getting their things paid for now by social media. I mean, that's just weird.
My question to you, Jay, I want to, if you don't mind, I want to change this a little bit. If you don't mind, I got this clip I want to share. The question is, when we look at the history of America, when we look, I don't know, have you heard of The Fourth Turning by Neil Howe and William Strauss?
I have heard of The Fourth Turning. Refresh my memory on The Fourth Turning. Like it happens every 90 years or something?
80 to 90 years is a generational thing. Every generation is about 20, 22 years, and the mood of generations spawn, and it ends up being...
There are four archetypes, right?
For each generation, and it's a predictable pattern that's been... It goes back to the 1400s. You could see this pattern of a high, and then an awakening, an unraveling, and then a crisis. And it's always in that motion going through history. 1620s when we first got here, 1690s when we first had our scuffles with the British, obviously 1780s and 70s when we really got rid of the British. That's when America started, we say. It became a centralized government then. The next fourth turning, 1860s, the government became even bigger and centralized. As I said, before that, it was these are the United States. After 1865, this is the United States is what they said after that. It was not that before then. And then you go up to the 1940s. You had the Great Depression and World War II. And how big did the government get then? Even much bigger, right? Now here we are, 80 to 90. We're about 80 years after that period. 75, 70, whatever. And here we are. Do we need the government to become even more bigger as it has in all of these previous fourth turnings? Or is this now time that the whole pattern breaks and starts something anew? With that in mind, I got this video. It's not long, but I don't agree with everything this guy says. Especially, I agree with most people I like. I love his diagnosis. I don't agree with his solutions, his medication, his prescription is what I'm looking for. All right. Maybe you know this guy, but
when we look around and we see today in our politics a rich white man telling working class white people that their problem is brown people, we need to understand the historical pedigree of that. That is symbolic of the entire history of race and class politics in America. The history of rich white people telling working class and poor white people that their problem are black and brown people. So beginning in the 1600s, that is what happens. Prior to about 1670 or so, there was no such thing as the white race, at least not recognized as such, called as such. That is not what people of European descent were when they were in Europe. They were English, they were Irish, they were Scottish, they were whatever they were. They were not white. Only in the colonies do we become white, and for a very specific reason, because in those early years of the colonial period, where you had white indentured servants, one level above enslaved themselves, and you had African-descended folks, some of them enslaved for life, others indentured servants also in the earliest years of the colonies. Those people would often see their interests as being common. They all realized that they were being screwed over by the same landowners, the same elite. They fomented various rebellions, like Bacon's Rebellion in Virginia, others as well. And as a result, the elite in the colonies realized that they had to figure out a way to get the other folks from Europe on their team. So they created this mentality that said, you're now a member of the white race, you're on our team, you're wearing our uniform. Now you're at the end of the bench, you may not get in the game, but you're on our team, you see. So then they start putting white folks, now called, on the slave patrols, right? Didn't really give them any land or any real power except the power to control people of color, which is why folks of color say, and they are right, that modern policing traces to the system of slave patrols and slavery, and we have to be clear on that because that's the history, right? So whiteness was created to divide and conquer, to create the notion that even though you might not have much, at least you're not black, at least you're not indigenous, at least you're not Mexican, at least you're not Chinese working on the railroads to build the transcontinental economy. You may not have much, but at least you have, as W.E.B. Du Bois said, the psychological wage of whiteness. And it's a trick that was played during the Civil War era on my people in the South, right? Rich folk, landowners in the South telling poor white folks who didn't own anything that they got to go out and fight to preserve the rich man's property in human beings. Fascinating. Why would you do that? Why would I go fight for your property? Well, because you told me that if I don't, these slaves are going to take my job. No, fool, they got your job. That's the point. If you got to charge $1 a day and you can make them work for free because you own them, guess who got the gig, Jack? Not you. So in fact, the system of enslavement was in the long run against the class interest of working class white folks, but they got suckered. Same thing happened in the union movement. You had white labor union folks who didn't want black and brown bodies in their union because it would reduce the professionalism of the craft. No, fool, it'll double the size of your union. And then when you go out on strike, they can't replace your happy ass with the brown folk that you didn't want next to you in the first place. Because when they do replace you with them, then you will blame them, not the elite. See how that works? It's a trick. And it has worked for hundreds of years. It is working on some folk right now. And it is our job to resist that with every fiber of our being.
Is this not happening today, my friends? Is this not happening today?
Wow.
Just as an aside, relevant aside here, the podcast Scene on Radio has a season. I shared an episode or two with you guys in our text thread.
Was that the Ibermax Kendi history lesson there? Or was that...
maybe. Yeah, he's in one of those or one or two.
Yeah,
of those
I loved some of that. Yeah.
And it's a deeper dive breakdown of the history of exactly what Tim Wise was just saying. It's really fascinating, super educational, especially if you're a white man and don't know but want to know. But for anybody, obviously, but for me, I just like this summer in particular, I just was like, I gotta stop listening to Pod Save America all the time and listen to some shit that's going to really educate me. And so, I got deep into Scene on Radio, and I've learned so much about history. It's super deep. I'm starting the season on men now, and it's uncomfortable. It's interesting. It's good listening.
I gotta send me that link again, man, because I missed that. I think I missed
that. Scene as in SCENE on radio.
Yeah.
Oh, Scene. Okay.
Yeah. It's great. Really good.
Yeah, man. So I think it's that's still happening, but even on a more complicated, deeper.
Manipulation.
Yeah, it's happening along so many lines.
A lot of manipulation going on. People are being manipulated. Their minds are being hijacked. Their ideas, they're not in control of their thinking, right? Like we should be. That's one an unalienable thing, or we should be in control of what we think. But that does not seem like that's the case. There are a lot of factors as to why that's happening. We go back to the beginning when we're talking about like social media and how that's really kind of hijacked our group think, like psychology or individual thinking, I should say, because we create these little bubbles of reality in our and we see these just like bombarding us every day, and when we wake up in our morning feed of like news, but whatever we're watching, whatever we're looking at, we're just bringing more of that into the mix, and we're just getting fed tons and tons of that, and it's never deviates from that narrative. So that's a problem that I see. I mean, when I came back from Florida to California, a friend of mine, he's been a progressive for most of his life. We're both from Eastern Europe. He's a really good friend of mine, but essentially he ended up voting for Donald Trump this last term. And I was just like, I was outraged. I mean, I voted for Joe Biden. I'm still left leaning, but more towards the center these days. And I was just like, dude, where are you getting this information? Why do you think, like the voting front and all that stuff? I thought it was fucking bullshit. But then I looked at like his feed, like I look at his cell phone and I'm like, well, it's completely different than what mine is. It's like a different universe, and it's just going back to the idea. It's like that Tristan Harris is talking about in that Bret Weinstein podcast, man. It's like, this is, social, these titans have have designed the social media to kind of feed us these narratives, and it's just basically, it's like delving into our own psyches, of which we don't even have access to, but those algorithms that they're building, they do. And that's really scary to think about for me.
That's scary. I guess my one problem with Tristan, at least I haven't seen the interview, but I did watch the Social Dilemma. And like you were saying before, the diagnosis was spot on. I mean, it should be. They helped create this world, right? So they should know. But the prescription, it seemed to revolve around this kind of theme. Well, fake news, blah, 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 fake news. Humans are too stupid. We live in a post-truth world. The actual answer is just making the algorithm better.
That's what you were saying last night. Yeah.
That's not what he was saying in this one. But what he was saying in this one was even weirder, man. It was like, he was like, well, we just need global governance. We need to find trustworthy people who can be on a board or whatever, and then decide.
Yeah. Like battle one dystopian solution with another dystopian solution.
Kind of, man. It was.
That's what they were saying. But yeah.
It was strangely dystopian where he was going with it, and of course Bret Weinstein was pushing back, and I mean Tristan wasn't like, we must create a global cabal that will control all minds, but in positive ways. It's not like maniacal. I will be the benevolent dictator. It was like he was talking about we need citizen panels, which is like a very democratic idea. And has had some success, actually, some demonstrated success in different, different areas. But then he was talking about because we're gonna have to prosecute all these, all these different cases, and we're not gonna have enough people to sit on these panels and blah blah blah. And I'm like, dude, this is like taking a tangled web and just already a yarn that needs to get unpulled and just throwing it down the hill, man. Like, fuck it. Let's just throw it down the hill and see how fucking tangled and enormous it can get. I'm just like, dude, okay, hold on. And this is where I just want to, I come with like true confessions here. I'm having this kind of like a disengaging from my typical paradigm, being able to see, Dana, more into your paradigm, I think, of understanding that feeling of we can't centralize solutions, and it goes against everything that I've believed in terms of the potential for government, the potential for solving things on a massive scale. Because for all of my adult life, I felt like if just the right people did the right things, we could do it, man. We could have a better world, more democratic, more egalitarian, where people who couldn't fend for themselves would be supported, and we would still have the liberty to live creative lives and to and the incentive to be of service, and we could create structures that incentivized all those things and actually supported those things. And I still believe that. But it's so tragically hypothetical in the real world that we face right now. And I don't know that decentralizing power is any less tragically hypothetical, honestly. I don't know that
anything that we want to do that we think should be done, anything in any area, any category, is not going to be done because we do not have power. That's just the way I see it, man. Again,
Yeah.
the protest for the war.
I understand.
The protest for anything that we can imagine, maybe with the exception on very local levels. Maybe that's an exception. But on a grand level, to get anyone in Washington and the chocolate city with the marshmallow center of corruption to do anything?
I love that analogy.
What in the fuck is going to get that marshmallow to be s'mored?
That's the best.
How are you going to burn that bitch and make it a complete chocolate city, for Christ's sake?
Word.
You know, with a crispy crust. Fuck that shit. They don't.
Some Reese's peanut butter pieces in there. Just
we are product to them.
Yep.
Yeah.
So how does the product awaken to control the producers?
Well, I'll just really resonate with what Peter just said, because I think I've already made that transition. Growing up in the Bay Area in Santa Cruz, living in San Francisco since '98, of course I was a lefty. Really believe in the power of government to, uplift us and take care of it. As more data I gave it a good fair shot. As more data rolled in, a lot of data came in, man.
And then you went back in time, right? And you saw all the data from like the 60s.
Well, yeah, obviously historical data informs us, but also, just literally, having impact your life and still. So I made the switch. I would still consider I'm an anarchist. And
Jay.
And
I didn't know that.
The average bro. So is the average bro. Well,
I'm standing on the lip of the pool.
Let me clarify.
I'm not quite in there yet. But
let me clarify, because anarchism is such a large word.
It is, and there's many factions. But
you're like a Chomsky anarchist.
Well, almost, not quite. I would be more of a Chomsky anarchist about 10 years ago, when I still had some faith in the system.
Yeah.
Now I'm what's called a voluntarist. Volunteerism, or more, I guess a better name for it is agorism. Agorism. It's based. The main tenet is all relations are based on voluntary transactions, and that's economic or social transaction. Everything is voluntary, non-aggression principle. Now, of course, the second you mention anarchist, the word, it happens every time. People are like, yo, you're an anarchist?
You
solve one of humanity's problems right now. So I don't have answers completely, but I definitely have a philosophy that a loving, caring, small local community in decentralized forms of economy and social, and social life is maybe one of the only ways out of this, because we're not voting for the president our way out of this, so that's why I have just kind of come around to like a decentralized, and maybe that word is tainted, but it's also, it can be a caring, compassionate, I wouldn't say collective, but caring, compassionate, almost kind of, again, I don't want to using these words, collectivism, socialism, communism.
Yeah.
A little dated. So I want to just think about new ways to describe stuff. I don't want to put stuff in boxes at all. But yeah, so I'm there, Peter. I just the data came in, and I just got so cynical. I'm a Dana. What the hell can we do about it? We gotta do what we can do for ourselves and our community, not just ourselves.
And yet you work for a company that's lobbying on the macro to try to change policy. You're not just like homesteading in, out in the suburbs of wherever you could do that.
Well, my dream is to have a nice little farm in the hills, and I'm getting closer and closer to making that reality. COVID has definitely inspired that, drive for me. What I will say is, we don't have any hope that we're going to have any political success in Congress before most of our work is on the ground in small communities. So in that respect, most of our work fighting for it is local, absolutely, because it's pretty much a local decision, unless states like California mandate it. And even then there are some local decisions. But what I will say is that we have had success in the judicial realm. We are actually in a historical court case, first of its kind, taking the EPA to court. I remind our guests that the EPA, just like the SEC and the FDA and every other organization that is a regulatory agency in the United States, is bought and sold, paid for by industry. Industry capture, revolving door is an absolute certainty. And just because it involves science doesn't mean these industries aren't captured. So we've seen the most despicable behavior in the EPA. We've taken them to court. We had our trial, federal court in San Francisco on Zoom, actually, in June. And our expert witnesses in trial were some of the world's most foremost neurotoxicity specialists and brain health researchers. EPA had the choice of using their own expert witnesses in the trial to back them up. They forego that and instead decided to hire expert witnesses from a firm called Exponent, which Monsanto, Cargill, and Dow used to defend the safety of their
EPA.
EPA.
The
On the side
EPA. Just let that sink in for anybody who's starting to feel like, hey, come on, you shouldn't be so cynical.
So skeptical of these, yeah.
You know, I'm feeling it myself. I feel a lot of pressure, actually, internalized pressure to not be too cynical. And look, sorry to derail. I want to come back, but like, just like, I do want to acknowledge that, like, some politicians, some people in industries, some people in, you know, every category of work, have like really good intentions. I mean, fuck, man, you know, I used to think like the scummiest of the scum were people who were day traders and, you know, just made money off of money. And what the fuck? But like, one of my best friends in the world is doing that now. He started to do it over COVID. He lost his entire career, right? Like $30,000 of work is gone. And his college teaching got minimized to shit. And, you know, his unemployment was shit and it was going to run out. And he got resourceful and thought, you know, I'll get into this kind of game thing and try to make a bunch of money so that I can support my career and help my friends too. And it's like, yeah, cool. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could have thought of other things he could have done, but yeah, you know, and like, do I judge him for that? Absolutely not. I'm like, go fucking make $1 million, man. Help, you know, fund our tours and our recordings and like, you know, get a fucking house, man, and like get yourself financially stable and help your friends who are struggling. Like, awesome.
Yeah, people can game the system. Why not, dude?
But anyway, that doesn't mean that there's not the negative externalities of the things that he's involved in.
Right.
And the same with other people who are like well-intentioned, but they're in, you know, they're complicit in systems or institutions that are doing external harm, right?
Like the NBA and China, like they're agreeing with all these things, you know.
Yeah, right.
Like
maybe they're doing some harm and some good, right?
Or they're just turning into the other cheek, basically. They're not acknowledging it, you know, and that's harmful in my opinion, man. That's harmful.
Totalitarian dictatorships are the ones that are calling the shots. They're calling the shots for the government, and they're calling the shots for you, my friend.
Dan, do you think
all under a dictatorship? Let's not be fake and happy joy about that. What do you think?
I probably know the answer, but do you think there's any hope in? Is there a way out in establishing third, fourth, fifth, sixth parties in America, like the rest of the world does?
What do you think? I think.
How are you going to do that? How's anybody going to do that? It's just going to dilute the power of the of the whatever side, you know, you identify with more. And then you're going to be like, fuck, man, now we're at the mercy of this other monolithic, you know, side. That's happened both ways, right?
Realistic in theory. maybe not in practice. It's a more pluralistic system where you have more voices and less, and the power divvied up between different parties greater. So the centralization, the concentration of power is a little bit less. But then again, I mean, other countries have it, but like you're right. I mean, it's a global problem, right? Oligarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at the reputations of oh God, how can I have forgotten her name? Anyway, let's just start with Nader.
Ralph Nader.
You were gonna say Jill Stein.
Jill Stein. I couldn't remember her name.
I did a fundraising concert for Jill Stein. She's a wonderful person. She's a very cool person.
You're proving my point.
She's a Russian.
Like way back, man, way back. You know, the John Kerry election.
Well, let's look at Jill Stein. Let's look at Ross Perot. Any of you guys know Gene Burns? Remember Gene Burns? Anyway, one of the greatest libertarians ever, by the way.
Oh yeah, Gene Burns. You said that video. Yeah, he's
he was
great.
A talk show host at KGO. I listened to him when I was growing up.
Wow,
I realized that he was even a candidate for Libertarian Party in the 80s. I think.
So eloquent, man.
Look at Gary Johnson. Look at their reputations. Even if you were their cousin, you believe they're fucking nuts, because if you watched any kind of news, they said they're fucking nuts. All right? So this is what happens to third parties in this country. They're not taken seriously. And hold on. Look what happened to Bernie Sanders, who decided to become a Democrat.
Bernie did it to himself. Come on.
I'm sorry. He did. He did.
Come on. He's like, let's give everybody health care. Oh, I guess we can't because I'm a Russian asset now, apparently. He's like, and everybody go vote for Hillary or Biden. I mean, come on. He did it to himself.
Excuse me, he can't vote against Neera Tanden?
I mean, this is the
what else do we need to know here about Bernie?
Wow.
Not up to the job.
Them just some fighting words, bro.
And I haven't heard a word.
I don't give a fuck. He's not going to fight me, clearly.
Well, Bernie
even fight Joe Biden.
Bernie put out a big statement about
stuttering
Syria,
like a fucking. What'd you say?
Yeah, well, where's AOC's statement? She hasn't said one word. She did in 2018 when Trump was bombing, though. She hasn't said a word yet.
Right.
I don't know. I haven't been paying attention to her, but I know Bernie did.
When you get in that basket, it's
all performative.
Yeah.
Well, okay, hold on though. Right?
Not all of them. Barbara Lee, I still like her, but go on ahead.
Okay, I just want to be careful about, and like I'm, as you can see, I'm like
as they aren't, by the way, but go on ahead.
As dark and cynical, you know, as the next person, kind of, but I do want to like be careful not to dehumanize, right? Because this is what we're so adamant about.
No. You're
Bernie,
completely right.
Like Bernie has done incredible work over his long career as a public servant. I mean, like some of the stuff he did just as like a mayor in Vermont was huge. He took on like major industry and like fucking changed shit for the better in Vermont. And he's been a champion of like really important shit, man. A voice.
You're correct.
A voice, a strong voice against like strong tides and strong currents. And he's been a big rock thrown in an ocean, and he hasn't been able to make huge changes, you know. But he keeps fucking throwing that rock in the ocean over and over again. And gotta give credit to the dude for trying. Yeah, and there's a lot of people who do try. And yes, the instinct for self-preservation takes over. The social pressure, right? Let's cycle back, right? Social pressure, starts to creep in, and this is an argument for term limits. But the conformity to authority starts to creep in, and all of that, and the economic interests, and the cynicism takes over. I really believe that cynicism takes over for many people in power, real quick, man. Real quick, they get in and they realize like, oh, everybody in the room thinks the saying the line is this big. Well, fuck, man, shit, no, the line's this big. Let's go do some coke and make some money. Fuck off. I mean, or whatever, you know, like, yeah, I'll take handouts from the lobbyists and sure, put some pork in the bill and okay, yeah, because nothing's getting done anyways. I guess, you know, fuck it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Think, man, you know,
Yeah.
but these are not like inhuman people, right? Like most, many of them, I wouldn't, maybe not most, but many people, I think, who go into politics and get into positions of power do it driven by good intentions to start.
Yeah, that's a fair point, but I will say it doesn't really matter. I don't really care what their intentions are.
What are you, a nihilist?
If they're going to turn around and work for...
Fuck yeah, nihilist all the way.
I don't really care what their intentions are. You know, give me a Dennis Kucinich any day over Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, baby. Dennis,
well,
man.
That's the thing, man. Listen, you're right, Peter. I'm so glad you pulled me back from the brink of hell. Listen, humans, and I'm really, really, really trying to stick to this in my life. Humans are not the ideas that are rumbling around in their brains. The ideas need the utmost scrutiny. The human being that has them deserves the utmost respect. Okay,
respect and compassion. I am heroic compassion.
When I go after Bernie, it's hard for me not to compare him against those who knew what it took to move their environment, their party, their country, their whatever to the place it needed to be moved to, and did whatever they needed to do. And listen, I'm going to put now. I'm curious about your thoughts on this, Jay. I don't. In terms of the government being bigger, I'm not so happy about that. But FDR, as I said before, in 1932, when he ran, he talked about the New Deal vaguely. No one knew what the fuck he was talking about. He got in there a year later, everyone knew what the fuck he was talking about, including the media. And when he ran in 1936, 88 to 98% of the media was against him. And the places where they were most against him, like 100%, those places went more for FDR because he was speaking to them. He said, fuck the media. The media was not in his corner. All right? The media was not in Bernie's corner, but he didn't have that fuck you political capital.
You know who did?
Trump.
Right. Trump said, it still says, fuck all of you motherfuckers. I don't care if you have an X at the end of your letters or a C. Fuck all of you guys. You're all fake. And you know what?
Hard to argue.
Motherfucker got it. It is hard to argue. I hate that a broken clock is right twice a day, but he was right on that shit. And he, in terms of his strategy, in terms of getting where he needs to go and not holding back at all, Bernie's not even close to that. He's not even in the same zip code as that. All right? The authenticity, all there. As a person, great, nice human being. We don't need nice. We need an FDR. Not saying, again, I'm for FDR, but or government growing as big as it did. It needed to, clearly, to exist as a country, but obviously the ramifications of that and how the later generations handle that or mishandle that or have ignored that slowly over the past 80 years has been horrible. So who today has that fuck you money, has that fuck you attitude, who actually has, and I'm sorry, or as Eric Weinstein puts it so greatly, who is that break glass in case of emergency person? When you have an army that's never been to war, it's not a fucking army.
Maybe it's us.
Yeah, but the thing is, again, we're back at the same thing. What the fuck are we going to do? If we get any kind of sway, we're Tulsi Gabbard.
Well, thank you.
I love her.
At the risk of like being too much of a stan, because I'm not really not. I mean, my answer would have been Tulsi, because you saw how she was shafted right the fuck out.
Oh, yeah.
Congress, she's like, get me out of this lion's den. I'm out. You know? But yeah, she's not perfect, obviously. the Modi thing is weird, and she had her like change her thing on the whole, LGBTQ,
Yeah.
that whole thing, and
Yeah.
I believe her on that one. But yeah, no one's perfect. But yeah, I mean, like she was, if she would at least be chirping about Syria right now, at least.
She is. I'm probably sure she is. I bet you if we Googled it right now, I bet you she's already said something about it.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if we have any political heroes anymore. Maybe that's the point, right?
Yeah. So again, I'm sorry to be at the end of the show and be in such a downer. But what the fuck do we do? We got the problem. We know what the problem is. What the solution is, yo?
Well, we talked about the Great Reset, right?
Oh, that shit's scary, man.
There's a guy named Derek Bros, good independent journalist, really thoughtful cat, spiritually grounded cat, good analysts. And he's put together something called the Greater Reset. And I recommend going to thegreaterreset.org. And you can see Charles Eisenstein there and a whole bunch of other people giving their talk on maybe our reset, the people's reset, what we need to do to break free from the chains of oligarchic, power that is trending more and more into like a technocracy, as opposed to just traditional power. So yeah, the Greater Reset offers some really good solutions. A lot of that has to do with food, decentralizing your life, making connections locally. Charles Eisenstein had a great talk. There is Foster Gamble from the movie Thrive. He's on there. So that could be a really good maybe starting point for people to ponder some individual and communal solutions, as opposed to like how we can vote ourselves out of this.
Jay, are you hip to Peter Joseph?
I'm not that hip to Peter Joseph. Hit me to him.
Revolution Now is his podcast on YouTube for free, and he's funds himself through Patreon and stuff, and does various things. He did the Zeitgeist movies. You probably
the Zeitgeist guy.
You probably know about Zeitgeist movies,
yeah.
But he kind of ducked under the public radar for a few years. And then he just came back this year with this new podcast, and he's got some other things in the works. And he was working on a movie which I haven't watched. It's called Interreflections. It's kind of an art piece on like the different variations of people in the future looking back at our time and being like, Jesus, the fuck we're thinking, kind of. That's the vibe I get. I haven't watched it though, but he's extremely intelligent, has educated himself deeply on many of these things, and has very strong opinions about. He's very much like a structuralist, and in that sense, I really resonate with a lot of what he says, but I also feel like frustrated by it because it's so much of it is about macro solutions. And it's like, well, how realistic is any of that though, dude? But when we're talking about solutions and like Great Reset and blah blah blah, I'm just looking at Derek Bros here too. It looks interesting. I'm gonna check him out. But some of the things that, just looking at some of the keywords that are popping out at me and Derek Bros's stuff right here, makes me think of Peter. And Peter's planning a big talk, like a big kind of lecture kind of thing that he's gonna give in March, and I can't wait, because he's been like really deeply contemplating what's not only like a diagnosis of what's going on, which I think his diagnoses are almost always totally spot on, but also like a prognosis of things that could change. And he's been hinting that he's thinking small. He's always talking about macro, but he's been hinting at things like kind of more or less along the lines of what you're talking about, Jay, in terms of like having small communities kind of game out, it's not the right word, but just microcosmic realities, creating new paradigms of economic interaction and of social just structures, so I'm really interested to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, definitely check him out.
I mean, I've had an attraction to the kind of commune or small community, like intentional community things since my early 20s, and my wife was like, fuck that. Like, I know people who do that kind of shit. They're fucking crazy. They think they have all the answers, and they're fucking but they're actually assholes, or they're fucking crazy, and the shit goes haywire, man. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. I don't want to go live with a bunch of it's like fucking basically evangelical whatever, not Christians, just like evangelists, right?
Yeah, I feel like intentional communities is probably not exactly the vision that I have, or that maybe I kind of share with Derek. But yeah, I mean, like, maybe not full on commune, like because you're gonna have, like it is. I mean, you're going to have a strong bond with anybody you enter into a contract with, living with, emotional contract or economic contract. So if you're going to build like these intentional communities, you would have to have a pretty clear, guidelines on
set of guidelines. Yeah.
It could just be something as simple as everyone who wants to build a community, go move to a specific area. You don't have to be financially tied to each other, but you can also support each other in a geographical location. That could be a start.
Yeah, did you hear about that? There's basically a community founded by Black people outside of Atlanta. They bought some land and are I forget what they're calling it. It's not freedom, but it's something like that. And they're naming their community and basically fuck this being on the grid shit. We're gonna
that's kind of
start
rad.
our own community, and they're it's not just for Black people, but we're starting it like that with our community out here. And yeah, I mean, it's deep, man.
Maybe that's the I'm actually the one maybe leaving here with a little hope from what you guys.
Oh yes, yes.
Because maybe, I know, blasphemy. Maybe maybe the way you subvert the government is by not needing them in any fucking way, shape, or form, and spreading that cancer, or healthy cancer,
virus.
Perhaps. That no, not virus.
Anyway. The fungus.
Ooh, there we go.
The virus.
Fungus is good.
If you have two different models, if you have two models,
that cleans up the garbage.
Exactly right. It's It helps. It helps regenerate life other than itself, right? The mycofield, they help trees. They give nutrients to trees. I mean, it's really just a symbiotic relationship. So go fungus, not virus. Go fungus, not virus.
Yeah, so thank you, Dana. That is a wonderful point. I guess be ready for challenges on that, right? I mean, it's not going to be easy, and we're going to have to give up some comforts.
Well, yeah, sure, but that's just our generation. Our kids will be like that. They won't know anything else, so that's fine. We have to, and I think we're willing to deal. That's the most important thing. Is to kind of get it started. But what other challenges do you see? I'm curious. I mean, if we really don't need them for jack shit, nothing.
Let's get into COVID a little bit then, right?
Oh shit, that's right.
So I'm sure I'm not going to talk about health issues because what YouTube does when you talk about the V word. But let's just talk about the passports, right? That could be something that can be an impedance to just even building a community if you can't travel.
Passports? What do you mean?
Yeah, the V word, passports.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Needing a passport, you're saying, and having to go to the post office and get a passport. So that you can leave the country.
Needing vaccines to get a passport.
Your digital immunization.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Your pass.
Process.
Freedom pass.
Yes.
Freedom pass. So I do think, I have my ideas about the treatments for COVID, but I do think an impediment could just be, like these top-down structures, right? If it gets to a point where we have to show a path to go somewhere, and we combine that with with health freedom issues, or at least informed consent, that could be an impediment. But maybe then again, maybe forming this type of community could be a solution to that type of impediment too. I mean, like where we are in California, I know you guys, two of you are in California, and Lucas is not long for California, but in many places in the world, even where you are too, Northeast, I mean, I'm not sure we have a resources problem for a small community. At least there's lots of resources to build small communities. The impediment is the actual power structure that already exists, right? So I just feel that we're gonna have to fight a little bit, and I really hope that fight involves not just pushing back on government, but just helping to form relationships and pass these ideas on. And maybe, just maybe, we can find some common ground to talk about these things if we're not censored to fuck off of, the social media platform, so we can't have a conversation. But I've been having inspiring chats with my friends kind of, in person. And so I'm feeling more optimistic than I was, say, 6 months ago about the situation we're all in.
Do you think is there moves to go for that V-Pass kind of shit here in America? Is that I mean, do we think that, for example, Trump supporters are going to go along with that shit?
They're not.
Like probably 75 million of them.
They're not, and a substantial portion of the left who are like hippies, who are into medical freedom, they're not either.
Right.
But let's just say, I mean, like, it's not theoretical. This is operational in Israel right now.
Right. That's right.
And it's about
China, obviously,
in UK. So it's not a hypothetical. I'm just wondering. And it's a small country.
In the UK, they're doing it?
America is complex politically, geographically. So it's by no means a certain thing. But it's just these types of restrictions in our lives, I think, are going a little overboard, even given the fact that we're, experiencing, a serious health scare. Obviously, that kind of solution is going way too far, in my opinion.
Precisely. Hell yeah. I mean, we're not China, this is not, we didn't sign up for shit we have now either, but we surely didn't sign up for that. Oh, Jesus, my mind is running 1,000 places, but anyway, yeah.
So you are feeling hopeful, Dana, now?
When you're in a complete black room, any even sliver of light's like, whoa, what the fuck was that?
So I mean, we should wrap up soon.
Yeah, I know. We're going forever.
I do want to just, we're talking about small communities. We're talking about homestead kind of stuff, and my sister and her boyfriend, who's now her husband, and now they have a baby, and who's 3. She's adorable, and they bought land in Vermont and started a homestead. They felled, a couple hundred trees by hand, planed them, and built a house, like super old school, man. I went there for the house raising. It was deep, and I felt like I was in like some modern Amish, kind of thing. Like, it was deep, man. And I know it's not just the Amish who do houses like that, but it just, it felt so like something that nothing I had ever experienced, because it was. And and they have a beautiful home, and she's an organic farmer, and she has a roadside farm stand, and they have extremely low overhead, and you know, they can self-sustain, and it's a hard life. Like, it's hard work
A lot of work,
all
right?
the time almost. But it's very satisfying, and they are living their vision, and I think that's beautiful. I just absolutely admire and respect what they've done. um, I am uh, like looking forward to the possibility of moving my family there someday, perhaps, and especially like I I take it for granted, and not to really take it for granted, but I do on some level, like acknowledge that I kind of take it for granted that if there's a shit hits the fan moment, that we would be able to go there. um, and and also I see the foundation of like generational wealth and privilege that allowed them to do that, and that allows me to like count on being able to go there, and that is a barrier for you know, most people who don't have that kind of generational wealth, that they can buy land and spend 5 years like just cutting down trees, and you know, getting help when they need it, kind of thing, you know. uh you know, it's like, and I've had my own version of that kind of generational wealth support in my story as well. um you know, as a city dweller. But that's why I own a house. That's the main thing that's, you know, been there for me. Like, you know, that would not have happened without generational wealth being handed down to me. And so, you know, when I look at those things and I think about like, hey, you know, let's just get a little community, or like go off, you know, with our loved ones, and be cool out in the woods somewhere, you know, in our own little spot. Like, it's just, um, I have a very naggy conscience about that, of like, yeah, we'll just leave other people behind to suffer. But I still have that naggy conscience right now, you know, living in a city and owning a house, living in a neighborhood where, uh, you know, many black and brown people who have lived here for generations are getting pushed out of this neighborhood because people like me are buying houses at high prices and uh, driving up their housing costs to untenable levels. And so that like naggy conscience, you know, like I'm trying to be part of like a larger community in my work, and do good work with the nonprofit that I started and as an educator. Um, but it just, you know, that's an issue that I think bears acknowledgement. That like things are complicated, and we are, even if we don't want to be, we are part of, we are products of in many ways, and we are we are intricately part of the systems that we live within. And you know, even if we're just like playing a small role as a cog in whatever, you know, systemic wheels we're part of, we are part of that. And there are, I think, like, there are ways of acknowledging that, and then like trying to act on it.
Yeah, that's the solution thing. Diagnosis is cool, but what do we do about it? This is the
Well, you
problem.
just, like, if you can act at least from your place in the cog, right, from your place in the wheel, uh, you know, and try to influence the direction of the wheel, you know, because it is going in a direction. It's not just like an endless cycle. These things they do have momentum. They have like generational incremental momentum in directions, and like individual actions and behaviors do shape the direction just ever so slightly in different ways, you know. I mean, without individual and also like group, like small group sometimes, and large group actions, you know, things, you know, will what am I trying to say, with small group and individual actions, and then large group actions also, like things do change. I mean, the civil rights movement, I think, is one of the most obvious examples of that. And yes, there are lots of things that are like not sorted out from that shit, but like there's a huge web of activists and people who made changes, huge web of people we don't read about, we don't even ever hear their stories, who were part of you know, training, who were part of activism, who just like took the, you know, took the whites only sign off of their store, or, you know, whatever it was that they did, you know, like little and things and big things, like all those things.
I think it's important to look at this in context, though, Peter. I mean, these kind of changes are great, sure. No, I'm not going to take anything away from them. But this is the change that we're making from what Tim Weiss was talking about. That's been happening for eons. That's the very beginning of the change that actually needs to happen. This is small change in comparison to the ginormous change that has been needed for decades.
Oh yeah.
So when we're what you're talking about to me is literally throwing pebbles into a river. Unfortunately, yes.
I know.
What? And honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I don't think it's helpful. I'm not seeing a positive from you feeling guilty about your privilege or your transgenerational wealth. Listen, none of us here had a hand in creating this mess. We're not going to perpetuate. Just acknowledging it is helping not perpetuate it. But feeling guilty, I think, about it is counterproductive.
I don't feel guilty. I just
misunderstood what you said there.
I said I do have a naggy conscience.
Yeah, well,
that's not guilty conscience. It's a naggy conscience that says,
okay, fine.
that says you better fucking do something, dude. Don't fucking sit on this shit and be like, oh cool, I'm totally cool, I deserve this because I work so hard or whatever. Yeah, I work hard. Yeah, I try to do good things, but like I also have like some serious advantages, and like, you know, that gives me you know, like a responsibility to not just be complacent, and to not just be like, yeah, cool, I made it, I'm cool.
You're far from complacent.
I know, man. But the reason is because of my naggy conscience that I listen to, you know, and that's not a guilty conscience, and it's not guilty because I'm not complacent.
Well, thanks for making the distinction. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't do the white guilt shit. I'm not into that.
Thank you, because that shit's annoying as fuck.
I am into the awareness and acknowledgement of privilege on whatever level, privilege, and the acknowledgement of lots of things, the acknowledgement of trauma, acknowledgement of,
well, that's huge. Now this is
history, acknowledgement of the dark side of shit, right? Like not having our heads in the sand about shit. And
all those reasons to have it in the sand, but yes.
And then like what I'm trying to get, I think what I'm always trying to get at is like the acknowledgement of like some empowerment, you know, and that's hard. when you're acknowledging all that other shit.
Well, that's why I don't even
Right?
try. I don't think I have any power.
I think that's where I would like to be able to
in
influence
comparison, in comparison to what really needs to be done,
right.
I don't have any fucking power, dude.
Right.
I know my place. The only power I have is what we are doing right now, is having this conversation, which is what needs to be happening with those motherfuckers who refuse to have it with us. If we talk against them, then you're the enemy. The New York Times is going to come after you. What do you mean you're having unfettered conversations on Clubhouse?
Opinion. What did it say? The New York Times just came out. Was it opinion? Critical thinking, don't do it. Yeah.
No.
Don't go down the rabbit hole. Don't critical think. Trust the experts.
Precisely.
I mean, the advice is literally not to think. That's where we are in society from the New York Times.
And people are being like, cool, I'm not going to think.
Yeah, it's dark.
Dangerous, I think.
I would just say, man, like Dana, and this goes for anybody, right? Like you have the power to influence lives, to influence other people. You have the power to be a mentor, in every person that you teach. You have the power with your music to, project like vibrations into people's bodies that, it actually does affect them on a subtle level, but it's real. You have the power.
It's like vitamin C.
You have the power to
vitamin C against a
vitamin D.
Vitamin D.
Whatever. But it's vitamins against a fucking drone-heavy government. This is what I'm saying, man.
Yeah, you never know, though, man. You never know. Like the universe is super mysterious, man, and like there's so many stories, and most of them we don't hear about, but sometimes we do, of like people who it's like, man, it was that one teacher, that one person. It was that one moment. I was walking up the stairs in my apartment building, and this guy like helped me, whatever, or I was like I was gonna maybe do something drastic, and this guy like talked to me like I was a human, or I mean, like, you never know, and then that person goes on and does something that affects other people's lives, and they affect other people's lives. And so I think there's like, at the same time that there's more than room, there's clear and present cause for deep cynicism and mistrust. There's also a call, if anything, because of all that dark shit, there's ever more of a call for each of us to try to be that person, as much as we can.
In the micro, because we have to live actually in the micro. The macro butts its head in a lot, actually. Yeah. But, dude, Gabor Mate has been my savior the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, man.
His son is amazing.
Savior.
His son.
Aaron as well.
Aaron Mate.
But, man, I've been listening to Gabor talk on so many different topics the past week, and it's just been...
Me too.
It's like, yes, all day long, all night long. And the fact that his field doesn't even listen to him is very frustrating.
That's dark.
Beyond words.
Yeah, I mean, like, he would listen to us, right? And he would be like, I thought about this actually today. I was like, what would Gabor Mate say to me right now? Because I was getting dark about something. And I was like, Gabor Mate would be like, so why, when was the first time that you experienced this kind of cynicism? Or like, first of all, like, how does it actually make you feel, right? How do you feel? Like, I feel angry, right? Like, just to tap into some of that outrage that I was feeling earlier, right? Like, I feel angry at, like, unfair, like, bullshit, or like people not living up to their potential. I feel angry. And and I shouldn't say potential, but like their responsibility, like the responsibility of their position, right? And that really gets at it, right? Because then you get back to like the childhood, right? And like, when did I feel angry at people not living up to the responsibility of their position, right? Where's the root of that? And it's like, oh yeah, shit.
Wow.
Right. Okay. So then that goes deep inside me. And then I can start to like grapple with that feeling, but also it can release me from the like the binding of the like victimhood, right? Of the blaming of the larger forces that make me completely disempowered, right? Then it's like, okay, then now I'm free to choose, because I'm no longer bound by that, you know. And yeah, I still am angry.
Choose.
But
This is all regarding your micro.
But
right?
I'm free to choose what I do in the micro, not to feel like my micro is completely disempowered. Right?
Yeah, it isn't. That's great. That gives us a lot of hope. But you know, it's hard to it's hard to acknowledge that we're not also a part of a macro.
I think it's both, man. I think it's both. And I mean, I live with that anger a lot, man. I do.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to shove it down and get rid of it, man. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not saying you're asking me to. I think there's a lot of social pressure to shove it down.
Well, again, what's on the front burner here? Because there's a lot of burners. There's a lot of things that need addressing. But what's on the front burner? What's going to make the biggest impact for human beings, full stop, in America? You know?
Everyone should take mushrooms.
Yeah, mandatory ayahuasca for all of America.
Well,
Big impact.
Starting with the marshmallow in the center of the chocolate.
Right. And also put them all on an island, give them ayahuasca, and make them listen to Love Supreme over and over and over again.
The benevolent dictator.
That's this. What?
You're the benevolent dictator.
Maybe if we made it like a reality show, and told them all that they'd get really famous and rich if they do it, we could offer them millions of dollars to do that.
$1 billion.
That's what we be in the grid that we live in. We have to incentivize everything with money and power, right? If you have a transformative experience, then you can have millions of dollars and some power.
Yeah, those who create incentive.
Fractional power.
If the ayahuasca spirit knew you came into this looking for money and power, it would shoot you or rip
You're totally right. Totally true. Just fucking shit you out, man. Just be like, you motherfucker. You're an idiot. Go climb a tree and go to sleep with a fucking coconut. I'll wake you up with a coconut falling on your face. Oh, man. Yeah. All right. Well, that was awesome.
I love these guys.
Thank you for having me on tonight. You guys are blast, beautiful, free-thinking cats.
Hey, man.
Very empowering conversation, guys.
I'm trying to have the conversation and have it last without having a war, because whether the war happens or not, it's going to have to always end with a conversation.
Thank you, Jay. It's really a pleasure, man.
Thank you, Peter. Absolute pleasure. The pleasure is mine.
Hopefully we get to play someday. You have to play trumpet, though, because I don't play shit other than piano.
I'll play it.
But how you play the piano. Oh, my God.
We got a pretty good band here, that's for sure.
Hell yeah. Shit.
All right, cats. Let's let Dana go to sleep, man. It's like
right
on the East Coast.
I'm looking at my clock here. Jesus Christ.
All right, cats. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
All right. Till next time.
All right.